words. You can't just leave well enough alone and enjoy a good run of luck. You know what I mean? You
No,
have,
no, you have to worry about what might fucking happen.
yeah, but as
Or what
opposed to
is
what is
definitely
really,
going to happen, but when
yeah,
it's going to happen. I'll start worrying about it now.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, exactly. That just goes to underscore how emo he is at heart, right?
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
you just can't enjoy the good stuff. Uh,
Hey, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Audiophiles. Yeah. My name is John, his name is Andy. Sweetness, sweetness. I was only joking when I said I'd like to smash every tooth in your head. Well, no, another time. But first, we have a tune to listen to. And brother Andy, what have you got neath the folds of your habit?
I promised that we would be revisiting this band at some point, and now is that point. The band is Death Cab for Cutie. We just a couple months ago, I believe, did Grapevine
Big
Fires.
bonfires, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then our only listen to them aside from that was their cover of Christmas Baby Please Come
Yeah.
Home during our holiday episode. So, or one of them, I should say. So now we're going to check out another one of their tracks. This one is called I Will Follow You Into the Dark, and it is a live performance on a VH1 session. Um, and I'll just say up front, it's really just Ben and his guitar for the most point. There's a little treat there along accompanying with him, but for the sake of the performance and honestly how it features on the album, it's just kind of a man and his guitar for the most part. So, um, yeah, please go off, give this thing a go, and come back and tell me what you think, and I'll tell you what I know.
Okay.
So, uh, here it is. Love of mine, someday you will die, but I'll be close behind, and I'll follow you into the dark, no blinding lights.
All right, it's quite a short song, so I thought I'd just have a quick comment at the start. Yeah, nice start. The music is very, that's all there is. It's quite simple. That guitar part, it has that nice sort of flowing, babbling brook type feel to it. And then I think it's a string quartet. Um, Musically, it sound. Do you know what? It wouldn't be out of place on something like Bombay Bicycle Club's Floors album, which I really like, and it has kind of a bit of that feel to it. There's definitely this music lends to a narrative quite easily, on whatever that narrative could be, and it's almost quite neutral, the music, so you can have you know a nostalgia. I think the strings make me think it's nostalgic and wistful straight away. They're kind of like a shorthand for that, but it could be, scrimping for apples as a child, or it could be walking home from outpatients on a Friday night. Um, easy one of those. So it's really interesting. His voice I've heard before. It's very nice. It works well. So yeah, it's an interesting opening gambit though. He starts with "A love of mine, someday you'll die." um, and whispering sweet nothings is just not a great opening line. So I wonder why he starts with that. This idea of the mortality, not just of their relationship, but of them on this planet. Um, yeah, it's an interesting start. It makes you wonder if there's something there already. And he says, "But I'll follow you into the dark." again, that's kind of laden with different sorts of imagery. Do you know what that line just makes me feel of, like Into the Woods? That sort of unknown. It isn't, but it's just interesting. All right. Yes. Clearly the lyrics are important here, so let's just whiz back a little bit so we don't miss anything.
Love of mine, someday you will die, but I'll be close behind, and I'll follow you into the dark. No blinding lights or tunnels to gates of white, just our hands clasped so tight, waiting for the hint of a spark. If heaven and hell decide that they both are satisfied, illuminate the notes on their vacancy signs. If there's no one beside.
Those people spraying looks a bit creepy to me, but anyway, he says something just there. Let me just.
Illuminate the notes on their vacancy signs.
Oh, got it. Yeah. So it's to illuminate their nose, and I was thinking, like Rudolph, but it's nose as in plural no on a vacancy sign. Got it. Sorry.
If there's no one beside you when your soul embarks, then I'll follow you into the dark. In Catholic school, as vicious as Roman rule, I got my knuckles bruised by a lady in black, and I held my tongue as she told me, son, fear is the heart of love. So I never went back. If heaven and hell decide that they both are.
Okay, so this heaven and hell deciding is chorus, clearly. We're halfway through the song. So it's interesting. So I've been scribbling down, trying to anyway, some imagery. I've got to read my chicken scratching, but he's also said there's no like blinding lights, and tunnels to gates of wires and pearly gates, obviously. So he's kind of rejecting the sort of traditional Christian ideas of images of what happens afterwards, death, and he's going for into the dark instead. So that's really interesting. But then in the chorus is like going back to referring to Christian imagery of heaven and hell. So he's like in purgatory waiting, and they've got their neon signs, and they just say no, there's no vacancy, so off she goes somewhere else, or they go off somewhere else. Sorry. Yeah, which is interesting. And then that verse just then, back Catholics, cool. Roman rule, or it could be Roman ruler. Interesting. And obviously, ladies in black are the none shall pass. Yeah. And interesting, like fear. So fear is the heart of love. Let's see. How do you get from like someone saying, "Hey, don't kill each other, don't steal, and love your neighbor"? How do you get from that to that? And he says something, I never went back. But if it's a school, I mean, you wouldn't have much fucking choice. You ask all the countless generations of poor Irish kids who got terrorized by Catholic schools, and not just the nuns, the priests as well. Jeez, literally. Yeah, so really interesting stuff there. And this Into the Dark again. I wonder if it can mean different things, you know, finality, nothingness, the absence of light, whether light means life, or if it hope or knowledge. It's just uncertainty. Yeah, it's really interesting. The music's really soothing and gentle. I like it, and the strings coming in and out. It's just really pretty. He's not going overboard in his vocal delivery either. It's well placed, as they say. So yeah, so whiz back a little bit.
Never went back. If heaven and hell decide that they both are satisfied, illuminate see signs. If there's no one beside you when your soul embarks, then I'll follow you into the dark. You and me have seen everything to see, from Bangkok to Calgary, and the soles of your shoes are all worn down. The time for sleep is now, but it's nothing to cry about, 'cause we'll hold each other soon in the blackest of rooms. If heaven and hell decide that they both are satisfied, illuminate the notes on their vacancy signs. If there's no one beside you when your soul embarks, then I'll follow you into the dark. Then I'll follow you into the dark.
Yeah, interesting. I can see how this will be a favourite of Andy's, definitely. Stopping it. No, it's just really interesting imagery and the starting point. You could easily extrapolate a couple of different meanings from this, but how is he going to follow so quickly? Yeah. And there's this conflict, isn't it? Well, you know, do I believe or don't I believe in the afterlife and religion and these sort of things? That sort of Catholic school thing. I mean, they get you young and then they ingrain their notions into you. It's hard to shake them, no matter how sort of agnostic or atheist you may grow up. And for other people, they have a firm belief, you know. It looks to them. Yeah, I like this. I wouldn't say it blew me away, but I did like this. I thought I think a few more listens would really get the sort of lyrics of this, because I'm just trying to write down. I probably got half of it wrong. That last verse felt very sort of like things coming to a completion. It's seen everything. It said Bangkok and Calgary, I think. Don't know what that means. It doesn't spring to any sort of imagery straight away. So it might just be a personal thing. But soles of the shoes wearing down, and then that sort of said about embracing the blackest of rooms, I think it was, and that's where you sort of hit that sort of higher note. It was almost like a sort of keening. It's interesting. Interesting. Well, we definitely need to discuss this. So let's get back and chew it up with Andy.
All right, so you are back. Followed your way through the dark. What do you make of this song, this performance? What are your thoughts?
Okay. So musically, the song's very simple, as you prefaced. Acoustic guitar and string quartet. The guitar strums are all along at a leisurely pace. I see he's got a capo on. I think he only does about 4 chords or whatever. And it's slightly there's an element of this arpeggio, also like picking strum, you know, but as a whole, it has a very gentle feel to it, and almost like I call it a gentle travelogue feel, as in it lends itself to a narrative,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
it's fairly neutral in the fact that tale can be childhood scrumping for apples. It could be the ride home from school, work, a hostelry, infirmary, whatever. But it does have what I would call a tall grass vibe to it, rather than, as you Americans would say, cinder block. It feels of the countryside rather than in the city, you know,
Yeah.
to it. So in my mind's eye, I can picture there's trees and a brook and whatever he's talking about. And the strings instantly add that shorthand of kind of a wistful nostalgia vibe straight away. The strings do, and string quartet's fabulous anyway. And as I was listening to this, I was thinking that tonally, this song musically would really fit in with Bombay Bicycle Club's album Floors, which I adore anyway. It just has that same feel to it. And particularly the way the guitar sort of bounces along. It's almost like, again, like a babbling brook. And a couple of their songs on the album have a very similar progression, the way they're just, gently sort of flow on. Yeah, the flow, that's it. So yeah, really nice. Any sort of variation is done is by the vocal melody, by the singer, which he lets the lyrics sort of lead that. He doesn't, though. He's got a nice voice. We've heard it before. He doesn't go over the top in anything, so it's all very sort of subtle. The song is really pleasant enough sonically, but I think any sort of connection on listening kind of lives and dies with the lyrics and the impact they have upon listening. So it's not easy for a first listen, and me as well, being what I am, as we've established over the last few years. But I found it very interesting. So he opens with a declaration. And I tried to get this as I was writing stuff down, so I missed the odd word, but I think I'm fairly close. Love of mine, someday you'll die. I'll be close behind. I will follow you into the dark. Got that, the title. So I thought it was really interesting that that's his opening gambit. Declaration of love. Oh, by the way, your time's numbered. Now that is the human condition, so we all know this, but it's an interesting sort of opening to a song. Someday you'll die, so it makes me wonder, this sort of issue of mortality being arisen straight away, is that where he goes, is his go-to thing, to demonstrate his level of commitment or love, that I'm following into the darkness, or is it quite an emo sort of feel to it, this sort of doom and gloom, or is there a prevailing condition which means they have to talk about it? It's just interesting. I've got no idea. It doesn't really make any difference, but it's just the things you think about in the narrative of the song.
Sure.
And then it comes on afterwards. No blinding light, tunnels to gates of white, just our hands clasped so tight, I think it is.
Yeah.
So we get these traditional associations with death, particularly the sort of Christian elements, light, tunnel of light, pearly gates. But he kind of rejects these for the dark. The dark itself is literally the absence of light. But is light, in this case, life or hope or even knowledge being in the dark, as in, for some reason, I kept thinking about like Into the Woods, that sort of darkness. That was just my head. But so it feels like a rejection of the religious coping mechanisms in favor of a finality of our places in the universe and a more sort of reality-based worldview, universe view, whatever. However, he then goes straight back into religious imagery, which I now understand is the chorus, because it repeats another 2 or 3 times. If heaven and hell decide, they're both satisfied. So we got this, scales thing, whatever, right? You go up or down, all that sort of thing. Just purgatory, isn't it? And I had to rewind this bit because it said illuminate the nose, and I was thinking, but it wasn't. It's the plural no. I know vacancy signs. That's so funny. That's picturing Rudolph. And no one beside you when your soul embarks. I thought I caught that the second time, but I thought it was interesting, the word embarks. And then I follow into the dark, the title again. So here, it's an interesting, it's also slightly mundane, and I mean that in both senses of the word, vision of purgatory. You've got this vacancy or no vacancy signs, and I immediately picture them as being neon. And it's kind of associated with the less salubrious variants of available accommodation, which tend to be more in your country where you drive to them. and maybe even hire them out by the hour. So you imagine the afterlife, it's this really cheap dives, and either up or down is still not great. Um, but then again, he also reaffirms his commitment to follow. Um, and you do start to wonder, how is he going to do that? Um, you know, Interesting. And then
Mhm.
the next verse, Catholics. I mean, I was again like two words to line at this point because I was going to paste Catholic school, vicious Roman rule, and I thought actually it could be ruler, in both senses of the word. Again, knuckles bruised, lady in black. I mean, lady. um, Something about she told him, "Fear is the heart of love," and he never went back. So yeah, this lovely tender image of vicious nuns beating children in school and shoving all guilt and fear into these little innocent young capsules of life. Um, it probably helped stop them reporting the priest behavior as well, bringing all this guilt to them. But it's extraordinary how you've gone from, hey people, don't kill each other, don't steal, and love your neighbor, to that.
Yeah.
But it's very interesting, and I think I said in the reaction, just be thankful he's not Irish, because I mean they really suffered decades of these vicious penguins beating the shit out of their kids, and then they hand them over to the priests for extracurricular activities. Yeah. So yeah, that's really interesting, that imagery there. And again, it's this well, you can say, I'm guessing that's personal, but again, it's a kind of a disavowing of a religious, following of Catholic in this case. But yeah, it's interesting. We get the chorus again, and then the last verse. It's a real weird sort of tone to it, because it feels like a wrap up of the couple's journey together, and it's something quite finite about it. So it's about how they've seen everything from Bangkok to Calgary, I think it was. Now, I couldn't think of anything immediate that's like imagery that involves Bangkok and Calgary. So I'm guessing that's just personal places rather than, you know, it's not like it's Golgotha or places like that. And then there is simple image, soles of his shoes are all worn down, and he says about time to sleep is now. So again, it really feels like his acceptance of this completion. And it's interesting. I'm not quite sure what to make of it, but the tone there is like, yeah, it's all going to finish. Um, and I'm wondering if that is the true situation in terms of the character and the narration as he's singing it now, is actually we're at the end already. Even though I said I will follow you, we're actually at that point where it's pretty close to it. Just, wondered. And then he sings the line, in the blackest of rooms. And at that point, he rises the note to this high note. Um, and it reminds me of this sort of keening you can get, especially like, the Celtic sort of vocalizing of grief at funerals, and keening. And it kind of reminded me a bit of that, which again, I thought was really interesting.
Mhm.
And then we end the course once more, and more illuminated noses like Rudolph. And then we finish with this, he reaffirms twice his declaration, to follow in the dark. So yeah, it's really interesting. It made me think quite a bit. Um, I can see why this would be a favorite of yours, you big sappy monster. Um, I
Not
think
wrong.
it didn't quite like grab me straight away, but as a musically, I really liked the sort of it's simple, but I love that sort of
Mhm.
stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I did like this a lot. It wasn't amazing, but I think I'd love to listen to it a bit more. But also, it made me think quite a bit, which I really and the imagery. So
Yes.
really interesting, really
Um,
interesting.
yeah, you're exactly right in everything you said, and you're right about how I would perceive it. And yes, this is, I think, one of my favorite songs from a lyrical standpoint ever written. I mean, I there's a lot of great lyricists that I've grown up listening to, and some of them inherited from my dad. Paul Simon
Yeah,
hangs behind me. I think he's an amazing
yeah.
lyricist and has written so many profound songs. And this has that kind of like I don't know. It's both intelligent and wise, in how it's written and how it flows. So I really really do love it, and I love
But it's There's
the
also a bit of
soon-to-be
ambiguity to it as well.
Yeah,
So you
yeah,
can
yeah.
take what you want out of it. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And it makes you think. And so yeah, and the beautiful gentleness of the guitar is something that really pulls you into. And as you said, it's perfectly written for this story to be told over top of it. I would suggest if you did like giving this a listen and you really would give it another go, just check out the album version of it. I didn't know how litigious Death Cab is with their YouTube stuff, so I didn't want to give you
Yeah.
something from their page, but it's on there and it's definitely worth checking out. And it's a song that has been it's like a musician's song. A lot of different musicians from a lot of different genres have said wonderful things about this song or have gone on to cover it in their own way. Very
Yeah.
interesting. There's a really for Triple J, which again is that Australian outfit down
Yeah.
there. They have this, and I've mentioned this too before, like a version, a really one of my favorite episodes is of all people, Halsey, the female vocalist here in the States, and Youngblood, kind of your guys MGK, Machine Gun Kelly or whatever. Uh, and they do a piano version duet of this song, and it's gorgeous. It really is beautiful. Like I'm not a diehard fan of either of those two at all. I don't
Yeah.
know anything of his. And Halsey is a talented musician, but just not my style. But that is a beautiful rendition of the song, also worth checking out. So, quick recap of the band because we have covered them before on the channel. They're an American rock band formed in Bellingham, Washington in 1997. Death Cab for Cutie's music has been classified as indie rock, indie pop, and alternative rock. The band is currently composed of Ben Gibbard, vocals, guitar, piano, Nick Harmer on bass, Dave Depper on guitar, keyboards, and backing vocals, Zach Ray on keyboards and guitar, and Jason McGurr on drums. However, the lineup on the album on which this track is featured consisted of Gibbard, Harmer, McGurr, and Christopher Walla, who was guitarist and the band's kind of like producer as well during this time. So, emerging from the Pacific Northwest in the early 2000s, Death Cab first rose to prominence on the strength of its confessional lyricism and textured indie rock sound. This track that we listened to was the third single from the band's 2005 album titled Plans, which was a follow up to their breakthrough album Transatlanticism, which I think you have some familiarity with, if I recall correctly. And it was their first album signed to a major record label. They had signed with Atlantic, I think. We'll get into that in a bit. So, Death Cab for Cutie had been contacted by major labels on and off for several years, but it was only after the proven success of Transatlanticism that they decided to start talking to labels about a potential deal. The fact that they had already achieved considerable success allowed the band to negotiate with a lot of creative freedom. According to their manager, Jordan Kurland, the band had spoken to pretty much all of them and then decided that they were most satisfied with their offer from Atlantic Records. In November of 2004, the band signed a long-term worldwide deal with Atlantic, leaving their longtime label Barsuk Records. The band released their fifth studio album and debut on a major label, the aforementioned Plans, on August 30th of 2005. Plans came out at a time of professional transition for the quartet. The group had been promoting themselves relentlessly, touring nonstop, and Gibbard found it difficult to write during this exhaustive touring cycle. Inspired by one of your all-time favorites, Nick Drake's songwriting process, he rented an apartment in Seattle and filled it with a piano, guitars, and his laptop to focus in. I treat it like a job and just go to my office. It has a view of the Space Needle and the mountains, he told Rolling Stone. Meanwhile, Walla, who had struggled with his dedication to being in the band, recommitted himself to it. Obviously, that's a bit of a foreshadowing of things to come because I've read the current lineup. Walla is no longer part of it. So I guess that feeling caught back up with him. Two singles from the album, Soul Meets Body and Crooked Teeth, reached the top 10 of the U.S. Billboard Alternative Songs charts, while the single I Will Follow You Into the Dark became the band's best-selling single to date. This track, I Will Follow You Into the Dark, garnered a Grammy nod for the best pop performance by a duo or group with vocals, which is interesting because I guess technically because it features and is credited to the whole band, it can be nominated as such, but it could have just as easily been nominated as a solo performance by a male vocalist, you would
Yeah.
think. Anyway, um, its album, Plans, also received a nomination for the Best Grammy Award for Best Alternative Album of 2005, as well as achieving gold certification in 2006 after being featured on the Billboard album chart for 47 consecutive weeks. The band released a touring DVD, Drive Well, Sleep Carefully, in 2005. Copies of the DVD were given away to promote animal rights, and the band are supporters of and activists for the group PETA. In 2006, the band announced the upcoming release of Direction, the Plans video album, which features 11 short films inspired by songs from the Plans album, each directed by a different person, which is really interesting. It reminds me, have you ever seen that film Four Rooms by any chance?
That rings a bell.
Yeah,
Probably
it's
rings
it's
a
an it's
bell.
a, it's shot in a hotel. Tim Roth is a bellhop overnight, and each
Yeah,
room
yeah,
is directed by a different writer. One of which is
yeah.
Tarantino. It's really clever and a funny movie, kind of a dark comedy. But it just reminds me of that this idea that they split up this project by director and track. Um, Plans became the band's first top 10 album, peaking at number 4 on the Billboard 200 and moving 90,000 copies in its first sales week. Death Cab was one of the first indie rock bands to score a top 5 album in the US. Prior to this, only Bright Eyes' I'm Wide Awake It's Morning had hit the top 10 in all. So this is really like the very
Mm.
beginning of the indie explosion here in the States for sure. Um, in all, the set spent 50 weeks on the chart, never selling less than 1,000 copies in a week in the first years of its release. By 2008, it was certified platinum. It has logged 1.2 million copies domestically sold as of 2015. So I imagine that number has only gone up. I don't think we saw a great deal of returns. But yeah, Jonah Bayer of Alternative Press stated that Plans seamlessly picks up right where 2003's Transatlanticism left off and praised its cinematic scope. The AV Club's Josh Modell wrote that the band wears grandiosity with grace, miniaturizing and polishing big, broad moments into tiny triumphs that, like audible illusions, feel simultaneously intimate and huge. Dave Turnbull of Music OMH deemed Plans to be an album of progression that is likely to win the band plenty of new fans, but it shouldn't alienate their current fan base either. Rhiannon Rodriguez, writing for Cludge, regarded the album as a melodically mellow masterpiece, which expresses the absolute epitome of this generation's pop, while stating that at times the writing feels almost too weightless, and Powers, writing in Blender, nonetheless contended that repeat listening makes these songs reliably addictive. So, jump into these lyrics, of which you caught many. Love of mine, someday you will die, but I'll be close behind. I'll follow you into the dark. No blinding light or tunnels to gates of white, just our hands clasped so tight, waiting for the hint of a spark. If heaven and hell decide that they both are satisfied, illuminate the no's on their vacancy signs. If there's no one beside you when your soul embarks, then I'll follow you into the dark. In Catholic school, as vicious as Roman rule, I got my knuckles bruised by a lady in black, and I held my tongue as she told me, son, fear is the heart of love. So I never went back. If heaven and hell decide that they both are satisfied, illuminate the no's on their vacancy signs. If there is no one beside you when your soul embarks, then I'll follow you into the dark. You and me have seen everything to see, from Bangkok to Calgary, and the soles of your shoes are all worn down. The time for sleep is now. It's nothing to cry about, 'cause we'll hold each other soon in the blackest of rooms. If heaven and hell decide that they both are satisfied, illuminate the nose on their vacancy signs. If there's no one beside you when your soul embarks, then I'll follow you into the dark. Then I'll follow you into the dark. And just to illustrate what a huge sap I am, I have this lovely piece of art from an artist on Etsy who calls themselves lyric art. And I have a few of them. Coincidentally, I have one that is a Paul Simon one. I have a Mumford and Sons one. I have a John Lennon one, and I have one of a night sky with stars and a dead tree, snow falling ground, one balloon off in the distance, and one in the foreground following it. And in font, it says, "I will follow you into the dark." And it hangs in our bedroom. So yeah, huge sap for this song. It makes me think about my loved ones, especially my partner. So yeah, nearing age 29, Gibbard had never lost anyone really special in his life. Growing older during an ideal and comfortable time of his life led him to begin obsessing over death, the afterlife, and the weight of his relationships. He started to take stock of the importance of the people in his life and felt the need to say something about it, writing the song to deal with his problems of focusing on life by expanding his scope to include death and what comes afterwards. You can't just leave well enough alone and enjoy a good run of luck. You know what I mean?
No, you have to worry about what might fucking happen.
Yeah, but as
What
opposed to
is
what
definitely
is
going to happen, but when it's going to happen, I'll start worrying about it now.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That just goes to underscore how emo he is at heart, right? Like,
Yeah,
you just can't enjoy the good stuff. Uh, it's just this idea that what if somebody dies and we're just floating, just stumbling around in infinite darkness, and I'm just trying to find some kind of spiritual kind of peace with myself and the world, he said. Originally planned to be recorded later in the sessions for Plans, technical issues arose with one set of headphones while tracking the vocals for a different song altogether. Producer and guitarist Chris Walla told Gibbard to take a break while they focused on the issue and got that addressed. And Gibbard picked up his guitar and began playing "I Will Follow You into the Dark," which was still going through the vocal microphone. Walla was impressed by the sound, leading him to suggest they do a quick tracking of the performance. It was this mono recording, with the only editing being mild compression, that was eventually featured on the album and released as a single. Due to the impromptu nature of the recording, the vocals on the track are mixed louder than the guitar, and Gibbard's breathing can be heard at the start of the song. Pitchfork Media calls it the album's quiet centerpiece. Yeah, exactly. Get it out, John. Yeah, Pitchfork Media called it the album's quiet centerpiece and praised its unexpected turns of phrase. Pop Matters called it one of the best written pop songs of the year, if not of the last 5 years. And Tiny Mixtape stated that it was one of the band's best songs to date, which I would absolutely agree with. I know when we last spoke, I really told you I wanted to bring you Kath, and until yesterday, peek behind the curtains, it was going to be Kath. But I just had this epiphany that like we had already done one track featured on the same album in Grapevine Fires. And we tend to like to jump around from albums before we just focus on one, unless it's this one album that's just so good, which we have a couple of those as well. So I wanted to jump around a little bit post transatlanticism, your familiarity point, and kind of show you some of the stuff. So this album features just before Narrow Stairs, which we will revisit, I'm sure, at some point. We'll get Kath on this channel. I really enjoy that song. But if I'm being honest, it's a better point to focus on with the band, given we've done that track and that album. And this is my favorite track by the band, as sappy as it is, and there's some really good ones. But yeah, just love this track. And I wanted you to check it out just for all those stated reasons, my affinity for it and the fact that we're filling in a little time gap here. So yeah, this is them after just the album right after you had sort of been introduced to them. So I'm glad you gave this a listen, John. I appreciate
I enjoyed it.
Perspective on the track. Yeah, I'm glad you did. Folks out there in the listening audience, please let us know what you think of this Death Cab for Cutie track, "I Will Follow You into the Dark." If there's shades of any other musicians that you kind of picked up on or influences that you may have discerned from this listen, please drop it down in the comments field below. Any other suggestions or any input you want to drop in there. The comments field is there for y'all. We love hearing from you guys. Love seeing y'all interact with one another. Also, please like, share, and subscribe if you haven't done any or all of those things. It only takes a couple seconds of your time. We really do appreciate it. It helps us out at the channel, so thank you so much for that. And hopefully, John and I will see all y'all in growing numbers on the next installment of the Audiophiles. See you later, guys.